Hey guys, welcome to the TFA Pro Series pre-show, the first of its kind and hopefully not the last. I am Dylan Megrath and I'm joined today by Vernon Kirk and Daniel Jonas. Vernon Kirk, of course, the man behind the memes over at Jiu-Jitsu Dad Bod, known for many things, I think, across the Jiu-Jitsu community, but I think a lot of people, even nationally or internationally, know about Jiu-Jitsu Dad Bod at this point.
I got a couple good ones.
You've been pumping them out steady for years. You're more consistent with the meme postage than I am going to gi class. So you got to be doing something right. You got to be a black belt by now. But today we're going to be breaking down and looking at some of the matchups that are going to be taking place February 18th here at Try and Fight Academy when they do their next Pro Series show. They did, I can't remember when the first show was, but I know that there was a lot of super good fights on it. A lot of people from my gym, Elevate, competed on it, Clinton Stanley and a few others. And it's attracted even bigger names this time around. And some of the most staunch and adamant competitors in the area are on this, between names like Vernon, of course, who is super active, Philip Painter. We have Austin Borders, a lot of people from Charlotte Jiu-Jitsu Academy, Christian O'Brien, just a lot of names that if you follow the local scene in the Carolinas, some of these names are really going to stick out to you and you're going to be like, even though this guy's only a purple belt, I think I've seen him compete like 6 or 7 times in the last year. So let's go ahead and get started. The match order is going to be going from the white belt level to the black belt level. A little bit different than how they tend to do things most places, especially with a super fight card. I tell you, you tend to see a little mix of everything, but here it's more like a traditional tournament where it's starting out at white belt and going up to black. Actually, no, out of U.S. Grappling or something, they would start at black belt, right?
A lot of
black
times,
belt would go first.
I actually always prefer tournaments like that because you could get, especially if you have to coach or something like that, it's nice to get it out of the way. Super fights are always a pain. If I've got, I'm glad my son's not on this one with me. Anytime he has to go first, I usually don't perform as well because my adrenaline's already gone. So his first super fight, he collapsed backstage afterwards, and I had one of the worst performances of my life after.
I always think about the Toro Cup where he got fireman's carry and he got choked
put
out
to
in
sleep.
Fireman's carry. I was like, I can't imagine seeing that happen to my son and having to go to a match after that.
Luckily, my match was first that day.
Yes.
I made sure Bagels did that for a reason.
And are you a purple belt?
I am a purple belt.
All right, cool. So what I was going to say is that at the white belt level, and maybe at the early blue belt, but a lot of the blue belts on here are super gamers. But at that white belt level, especially for young kids, sometimes we see that the match will always go kind of more than likely it'll go 2-time, and then purple belt level and more advanced blue belt level, they usually are submitting each other either super fast or they're catching each other in a random moment, and so the matches tend to be a little bit shorter. And then as you get into brown and black belt, where people have that high tier level defense, we start to see matches kind of go longer again. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out at this particular event. Out of all of our white belt matches, I don't particularly see any names that I recognize, but I do see a lot of gyms that I recognize. TFA, Checkmat Charlotte, Boondocks MMA, Riptide MMA. I've commentated a lot of jiu-jitsu and MMA, and I've seen these gym names kind of pop up over and over and over again, and I don't think they're going to send somebody out for a super fight unless they feel like they're ready. When it comes to getting people ready for Sambo or jiu-jitsu or whatever the case may be for you, when is a white belt come to you and it's like, Coach, I want a super fight? Or what?
I actually had a rule in my gym: white belt super fights do not exist. I
like that rule.
Personal opinion. I mean, I get we have white belt fights on this card, and I definitely don't want to denigrate them because I know Walter or Waits for example, and he's actually pretty good, right? But in all honesty, what I personally feel is at white and even at blue, you need to be competing as much as humanly possible.
In a more traditional style tournament.
Well, exactly, because you need reps. And even I didn't start really picking and choosing and getting a little bit pickier with things till about brown belt, which maybe I should have done it sooner. But again, back then there weren't near as many competition opportunities. I'd compete 7-8 times in a year. That's including judo as a blue belt, and people thought I was insane because you were when Naga decided to come twice in the year, everybody lost their mind. Everybody was so happy. It was really hard to find tournaments that were close to you back then. Nowadays, you can throw a rock any given weekend and probably hit a jiu-jitsu tournament, which is really cool, but it also can be kind of a little off for me because then what happens is a lot of them don't get supported and then it thins out, or people oh well, I'm only doing this, or I'm only doing super fights, or I only like this rule set. And I'm like, I feel like white belt, blue belt, and even into purple a little bit, you don't have the right to have that opinion. You need to be training as much as possible. Like my first tournament in jiu-jitsu, I was a blue belt. I'd never done a jiu-jitsu tournament. I'd done like 3 judo tournaments, and I tried to sign up for beginner white belt, beginner no-gi, because I'd never taken any no-gi classes. They're like, but you're a blue belt. I'm like, but I don't do no-gi. Tough shit. And I got my ass handed to me. I won my gi division, but you know what I mean? Just
like you said, it goes back to paying your dues,
right?
And kind of getting the reps, right? Yeah, I think that you can definitely stand to get a lot better from the environment of a super fight, and how it does differ a lot from a tournament, because it's a lot of times when you go to a tournament, especially when you're just a white belt, nobody's really paying attention to your match. Most people are like walking, like actively trying to see around you to see some real jiu-jitsu, like they're trying to look right past your ass. So that pressure of having people watch you, especially if you want to do something like MMA fighting or something that's more in the center of a ring under some lights, it can kind of help mentally with that. But I think that it's great that there are opportunities for white belts and blue belts that might be standouts, like weights.
Yep.
I think that there's a lot of people who get into jiu-jitsu from other sports, whether it be collegiate wrestling, sambo, whatever.
Yep.
They kind of have that right as well.
Well, and that's a little bit different too, right?
I would say it's contextual, right?
Right. Even with the combat, I know for high school wrestling, it's that tournament style, unless you're doing, team matches, but there's something to be like, you go to your first high school wrestling tournament and like no one's watching you, and then by the time you're a senior, you're hoping you're putting all that work in, you're a captain or whatever.
Both teams and the audience are all watching
your match.
It's like a gradual progression.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so let's get into some of these matchups. I think the first matchup I wanted to speak to a little bit in depth was our only ladies matchup of the day, which is also one of our only gi matches of the day, between Gracie Portalago from Mindset. I know she also trains a lot out of Charlotte Jiu-Jitsu Academy, and then Lily Griffin, who trains right here at the Triumph Fight Academy. So I assume you guys are a little bit more familiar with Lily then.
Yep.
Okay. What can you tell me about Lily Griffin?
Lily's got a very good guard game. I've actually not only coached her a little bit, but I've also reffed matches of hers, and she's got a really good guard game. She's pretty slick with it. Very good at control and finding her openings. Like, she's hard to smash down. She's hard to move around. I like somebody who, like, I'm wearing the shirt that says you don't get to Valhalla by pulling guard, but if you're going to play off your back, at least be active, and she's active. That's what I appreciate. The whole point with a lot of it is really you need that movement, that mindset, that type of thing, and she does a really good job with that. So I like her. I haven't really seen much from Gracie. I don't know if I've ever actually seen her roll, so I don't know what much I can say about her.
I could speak to the fact that she trains at Charlotte Jiu-Jitsu, that if Lily's going to play that guard game, I know the guys and gals at CJJ, coming from Piper's style, that pressure passing is going to make a good...
And they also have a ton of, particularly half guard players, but guard players in general there. I've trained there a couple times in the past few months, and I'm kind of like, for the most part, especially when people kind of are so good that I'm forced to play my A game, I play a lot of like knee shield entries and stuff, and everything was getting shut down and pressure passed by pretty much everybody there. So I know that she also trains a lot with Owen Tipton. So I'm interested to see if she, especially in the gi, where those like reverse De La Rivas and De La Rivas are a little bit more valuable than they are, or a little bit more high percentage than they are. It'll be interesting. She's also sponsored by one of our sponsors, AMP American Murder Pajamas.
Excellent.
Or actually, no, that's Owen, who's sponsored by AMP. I'm thinking of, but she reps them as well. And I know that she's competed on Toro Cup, and she's got a match upcoming on Toro Cup March 4th, which is like 2 weeks after this. So even though she's just a blue belt, she seems like she's trying to apply for as many cards and tournaments and things like this. I know she just also competed at New Breed. What was one of Charlotte?
New Breed last weekend.
Yeah, she just competed there. So I mean, I definitely think it's like we were going back to the context of super fighting, and it's like, if you're already competing in every bracket that comes your way, and you just want a little icing on the cake, then
I'm game for that. No, like I said, I don't want to make it seem like I'm like, oh no super fights until, but
I definitely see what you're saying though. If you have a student who's like only wanting to compete in combat jiu-jitsu super fights and doesn't want to do a traditional 8-minute point rule
No.
say. You're like, I don't know.
Well, I
buddy,
mean, I've
let's slow
had
down a
white
little bit.
belts sit there talking to me about what their walkout song is, and they haven't competed yet. And I'm like, bro, cart before the horse. Like, yeah, I put thought.
And for all of you white belts out there, we all have those thoughts, but those are the kind of thoughts you keep to yourself.
It's the same thing when you're sitting there and you go to your coach. When am I getting promoted? You fucked up a long time ago. I don't know how to put that.
And for all the white belts out there, it's so much better now as a white belt. That
Oh
it's
my
$100%.
god!
just appreciate the fact that there's even offers for super fight white belts.
Look, my first super fight was in 2013 or 14 as a purple belt, and I had applied to I can't even tell you how many super fights, but there were none around. But like, I was applying to super fights in DC, Atlanta, Florida, and I had,
Well, I know you fought on Fight to Win.
Yes,
which
I have.
Is one of the biggest promotions, especially when we talk about like the bright lights and the big stage. They do that better than most promotions can even dream of.
Look, I had a panic attack before my first one. I'm not gonna lie. I had to FaceTime John Shell, and he basically told me if you don't get yourself together and go choke him, I'm gonna come choke you. So that's what I did.
Classic John Shell pep talk. What more do you need?
That's all you do need.
Were there any other matches before we get to the folk style match that you guys are interested in? I know Dale.
Yeah, that was the
I
one.
know Dale from Charlotte is good. He fought on.
Talk about half guard.
Yeah, he fought on
Dale's the
the
guy.
Carolina Combat League that took place
Yep.
here and had a great match. I mean, I've seen him rolling with some really, really game guys. I've never rolled with him myself, but every time I see him, he's on that half guard. He's entering on legs, and that's another thing that's nice for the blue belts too. And this is that they can kind of you use more weapons. You know,
Right.
it's only Naga that really lets you do toe holds and heel hooks and stuff like that. I attended a tournament a couple weeks ago when I like my first tournament competing in like 3 or 4 years, and you couldn't knee bar all the way up to brown belt, and I was like, that changes things a little bit.
Well, that's typical IBJJF rules.
Yeah, I
and
agree. It is.
I mean, again, like I'm a fan of leg locks. Like people know that I will go after feet in a heartbeat, but I also think that like you need a complete game. And I think there's a lot of guys, like I always say this, if you're a blue belt and you are really good at X or Y or Z, like, some weird guard or foot locks or something like that, unless you're training all the time, the rest of your game is probably suffering because you work so hard on that one thing. And I hear guys say all the time, well, I don't like this rule set, I can't heel hook. So one submission's gone and magically your jiu-jitsu goes away. Yeah. It's the same thing with guys who are like, well, I only do gi or I only do no gi. It's like, it's the same question I have.
You don't want to be a one-trick pony.
No.
Yeah,
I do think it's weird, like, especially IBJJF, where ankle locks are totally legal.
Yep.
But then they're like, well, don't touch their heel or their knee. You might as well just let them do everything. You're already playing a limited combat game anyway.
Right.
Vern said it best, I think the last time you and I were here. You said if you can jump, pull, guard, you should be able to do anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Because jumping, pull, guard is like the most dangerous thing I can think of.
Shout out to Bagels back when he was a blue belt.
Dude, look, I've seen Bagels like roll up to giant men, jump guard, and Kimura the hell out of them. Again, huge fan of his. But like, I'm a fan. Like, here's the thing. This is the way I view the guard jumping thing. Any sport, jiu-jitsu included, by the way, if I pick you up off the ground for a takedown, it is my responsibility to bring you to the mat safely because I initiated. I don't care if it's like a double leg, a hip toss, whatever the case may be. As long as I don't purposely spike you on your head or neck, it's legal. Okay. If you jump guard on me, you have chosen. You have made this decision, but now it's on me? No, that is wrong. I shouldn't, again, the same rules to a takedown should apply. I should not be able to get a running start. I should not be able to drop you on your head or neck. But if I want to return you to the mat with force, you made your decision. Why? Because it's the magic guard? Like, I don't understand that. Now, if I stand up from guard, like if we're on the ground and I stand up and I try to spike you, that's different. I understand that. And this is where people always try to argue with me because they're like, well, you're talking. I'm like, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about one specific thing. You jump guard. Yeah. If you look, how much do you weigh?
150.
So if you and I are in an absolute division, I can run and jump guard on you?
I mean, I wouldn't appreciate it.
That was
sure.
like like a Stone Cold Des press.
Dude, seriously though, it's not right.
Yeah.
But reaping the knee is totally like I can't turn in a
taboo.
little bit on an ankle lock.
Taboo.
That's horrible for your knees, but that's cool. All right,
Well,
rant over.
leg locks as well. Once you start learning them and start repping them with people that also know how to rep them and do them correctly, then they're not. The idea of them it's not as dangerous anymore. It's the same idea with takedowns.
A lot of the dangers and the mystery in the
You're reading my mind. Thank you, sir.
Get good at takedown defense. Do takedowns. Like,
Well,
If you want to get good at wrestling, you have to wrestle.
Yeah,
yeah. Again, look, fear is caused by ignorance, and we can say that about anything in this world. And if you're afraid of leg locks, it's because you don't understand leg locks. If you're afraid of takedowns, it's because you don't understand takedowns. Don't give me this bullshit of jiu-jitsu as a ground art. Mm-hmm. It comes from judo, and Japanese jiu-jitsu and catch wrestling and all these other things that start from your feet. A lot of previous guys knew takedowns. Look at a lot of the old school guys. They're good at takedowns. Yeah. What happened? I'm confused. Rant over.
I think this is why a rule set like this is a little bit more interesting and more fun to watch, because I feel like the guard pulling is incentivized in a more traditional point-based rule set. It's almost like you're being more rewarded for the idea of sweeping than you would be for a takedown. And now, if they just changed it a little bit to where takedowns are worth 3 points instead of 2, maybe we would see another meta shift, especially at that level of like blue belt, purple belt. But I just know that like a lot of academies, modern American jiu-jitsu academies, like John Piper's school and like Cody's school, my school where I train, very early on, you're teaching these guys not necessarily how to rip a heel off, but how to protect themselves, how to rep the move safely, and how to get out of these mysterious situations, as Cody likes to call them. Anytime you see something that's like a new variable in jiu-jitsu, you're like, oh, I'm so terrified of this that I freeze up, and now, oh, he's got my foot, and now it's over. So I would definitely not sleep on the foot locks from any member of either of those schools, because the Next Element Academy is also an extremely active, competitive school, and Painter's there, who we'll talk about later, and I don't know, Zach Moore, who we'll talk about later, is also a notorious leg locker at this point.
Absolutely.
So besides that, they got Swamp Fox and Lycan MMA putting up 2 more blue belts, adults in the 40 bracket. Not familiar with either of those guys.
I know Chris pretty well.
I was going to say, I think I've seen Chris compete before.
He competes a lot, actually.
Yeah.
I have a lot of respect for Chris. Chris has done, a lot of different super fights. He's always doing IBJJFs. He's always competing, and as a fellow old guy, I always respect that.
It's like Wayne Brady.
And my son actually trains at Lycan, so I know the type of level they are there too. I think that should actually be a pretty interesting matchup. I think, again, Lycan's a school that likes to pressure pass as well. Chris is typically a guard puller, so again, we're going to have another stylized matchup like that.
Yeah, and then speaking of different like rule sets and takedowns and et cetera, we've got something I've never seen on a jiu-jitsu super fight card, and I think this is something that Avery offered and only a couple people signed up for, and 2 of the people that signed up for it were Sergio Lopez and Jake Polanski. Sergio from 10th Planet Greenville. I think I just saw him on Carolina Combat League in Asheville. Then we have Jake Polanski, who's been on like every super fight card in the past year in the Carolinas. Consummate competitor is Jake Polanski, and has a background that I know of to be very extensive in the wrestling. I'm not familiar with Sergio's background as far as wrestling goes, but to even ask for something like this, you got to assume he's a bit of a gamer.
You got to assume he's got something.
Over under on someone showing up with a singlet.
Now, I would not put it past Jake to show up in a singlet.
Right? Yes.
And do we carry the singlet over to the jiu-jitsu match?
I would.
That's what I would hope to see. Yeah. I mean, especially if you're going to come out in one that's like maybe from the high school days or something like that, or you have.
I'm going to show up to a jiu-jitsu event in wrestling shoes, a singlet, and headgear, and I'm going to pull guard the entire time. Watch.
There was a guy who competed in Raleigh Carry.
People know
and he would always have a singlet on at U.S. Grappling. He did the Ranger Up tournaments in a singlet.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, the muscular guy and bald head. And one day I saw him in line at Chipotle, and I was just like, I recognize this guy, and I'm sure he recognizes me, but like I don't know his name. So I was just like, aren't you singlet guy? He was like, yes, I am.
No, how did he do at those tournaments? That's the question.
I mean, I always saw him doing pretty well, especially Ranger Up, because Ranger Up is a tournament. Well, I don't know if they're even going to do one anymore, but it was certainly a tournament that incentivized takedowns more. So, you got more. You automatically lost. You automatically gave up takedowns.
Here's the way the Ranger Up rules work. Basically, the same as jiu-jitsu scoring. 3 notable exceptions. If you pull guard on me, I get takedown points. Number 2, in high school wrestling, there's escape and reversal points. You get escape and reversal points. Oh, okay. It was a very interesting tournament. Nick Palmisciano, the man's hey, as I wear Ranger up as we speak for a shirt they made from one of my memes.
Also, the man behind Diesel Jack Media and a lot of cool stuff.
Authored,
documentarian.
Yep,
I mean, a man with many hats.
And also helped author Tim Kennedy's book. So,
okay.
But yeah, he. I give him a lot of credit for that.
I like that idea. You get a lot of points. I mean, if you get someone that's really good at submission escapes.
It's a nice middle ground between a traditional jiu-jitsu rule set and more of a traditional wrestling rule set.
Yeah.
And as someone who's like a little less familiar with folk style wrestling, what kind of separates it from the other styles of wrestling?
So with So folk style high school, it's typically in high school wrestling. So like body locks, once your knees hit the mat, you have to separate the hands because body locking is such a dominant position. So having that ability to connect your hands on somebody, I mean, when you see body lock passing or anything like that, you see it's a big advantage to be able to
especially
do
hot in jiu-jitsu right now.
Yep.
Very, very hot.
And then on top of that, like, you know, the wrestling mat, the times too, it's 3
2-minute rounds.
3 2-minute rounds. So it's like faster paced. And obviously you start different positions.
And a pin can finish it.
Pin's going to finish the match. And there's a tech fall rule, just like
tech fall rule is great.
But like, that's why you see like you can lock your hands if you're on top, but you have to be pinning the person when you do. But if you're just like, you know, if they're belly down and I lock my hands, that's a penalty on me. I used to get ref goes like this. I had that happen to me a lot when I wrestled. Fucking hate that penalty.
Because it seems so natural.
Yep.
Yeah, I would definitely get caught doing that too.
Anytime I'd go to like my son's high school and like work with them, I'd have to be like, don't lock your hands.
Yeah.
Don't choke anybody. Don't lock your hands.
And then these guys are going to run it back later in the same night. We're going to give them like an hour or so off to kind of rest up, change into some actual no-gi gear if they want, take the singlets off, and they're going to compete again at purple belt in jiu-jitsu later in the evening. And I definitely, you know, as somebody who's seen both these guys compete, I'm definitely more interested in that side of things. You know, I don't know a lot about Sergio's background, but I know Jake's a game wrestler for sure. And I know that when it comes to the jiu-jitsu especially, he's got a lot of interesting little tricks to kind of offset. Like, he's like a true wrestler guy, but he also is a true purple belt in jiu-jitsu too. Like, he's got a lot of jiu-jitsu and a lot of wrestling. And I think that a lot of people are, especially at purple belt, they have like an identity where they're a specialist in one thing or the other. Like you were saying, like by the time you get to purple belt, you should have a game figured out, and you should have like more of an identity as far as like what are you really, really good at.
I view it a little bit differently. Like I say, by the time you're a purple belt, like especially like, you know, into your purple belt, you should have your game figured out for the most part. Like the last piece to my game at purple was, well, if I end up on my back, how am I playing guard? And that's what I spent most of my purple belt figuring out. But you should have an idea of what you're good at, and like especially by the end of your purple belt, you should be a black belt at something. Where it's like if you've got that one move, that one guard, that one thing where it's like, if I catch you in this, I don't care who you are, you're toast. And that is where a lot of people, I think, kind of struggle sometimes, is either trying to figure out one of those two things. It's nice when I love seeing guys who come in from other sports and hybrid. That's what a lot of this American Jiu-Jitsu movement is. It's hybridization. It's
100%.
wrestling in Jiu-Jitsu. And I'm a big fan of that. That's, you know, my entire game is...
It's a lot like the philosophy of mixed martial arts, but it's the mixed grappling arts.
Well, it's Jeet Kune Do.
Yeah,
I mean...
100, yes, of course.
You know,
of course.
like, not to be, you know, a nerd about it, but take what is necessary, discard the rest. That is what Jiu-Jitsu should be. But that's the advantage of cross-training with other arts, doing judo, sambo, wrestling, even striking arts. Like, I actually, when I talk, as bad as my striking is, and my striking is horrible, when I talk about certain concepts in jiu-jitsu, I actually use striking as an example, not grappling. So it just depends on what we're doing.
And I think different, like with sambo and different arts too, they prioritize other parts of the game that you may not see in like different things. So with sambo, they tend to grapple, like they use their legs to control a lot.
Especially in the positional changes.
Right. And in jiu-jitsu, maybe you don't really go over that with your certain professor, but just having the ability to go to another, you know, art and look at that, take that. And my first jiu-jitsu professor here in the United States said, you have a buffet. That's what your stuff is. It's a buffet. That. You grab a plate and you take whatever you want, and it'll grow and grow, but you're not going to eat from everything. you might take this and that, and then that'll be your jiu-jitsu,
Yep.
catalog of stuff that you
No,
do.
and that's exactly it. I
like
love
that. A
that.
lot. I like that mentality a lot. Was he? If you don't mind me asking, was he Brazilian?
No, he was an American. Shout out to Todd Wheeler. I think he cuts hair now.
Nice.
But he was rapid.
I was gonna say the
Raleigh?
Brazilians are
Yeah,
always.
I remember him.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he used to be like Sean Patrick Flaherty's jiu-jitsu partner. in
Oh
Hollywood.
yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, he was really cool.
I actually, when he stopped, I know a couple of his guys
Yeah.
came and trained with us. Like I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Say,
really
every
cool guy.
Brazilian I've ever learned jiu-jitsu from had amazing metaphors.
Yeah.
Amazing metaphors. After that, we've got another fighter from TFA, Ryan Camp, who I've actually heard quite a bit about. I've heard a lot of talk about Ryan. Can you guys kind of fill me in on what his game is or what he likes to do?
That's another really good wrestler right there.
Yeah.
Ryan's an amazing wrestler. His jiu-jitsu has actually come a good bit. He just won his bracket at the regional sambo event as well. So
That's I know this guy now.
yep.
Yeah.
And Ryan's very good. I don't know much about his opponent. Like some of these guys, it's like I might recognize a name or I might recognize your gym. So sorry about that. But
I actually don't recognize that gym.
yeah, I really don't know that one either. But I mean, there's so many around nowadays. I jokingly say it's like it's in the day
There's
now.
a new one every day.
Yeah, it's nuts, but it's cool.
And it's not just that there's a new jiu-jitsu gym every week. It's that there's a new jiu-jitsu gym with somebody heading it who's like an insanely good, technical, talented person. It's not like there's just a oversaturation of general jiu-jitsu out there. There's an oversaturation of like very, very good instructors, students, academies now. I mean, this academy wasn't here a year and a half ago, and this area, this is kind of the area that I grew up in. I grew up in Lancaster, which is like 20 minutes from here. And when I was growing up, it would have been incredible to have a place like this that I could come to and actually learn real martial arts, because the only thing that was there was, 90s karate when I was growing up. So a very special, specific kind of karate.
What I would do to go to those places for their pink slips of their gym.
Look, I remember driving back from Roanoke one day and seeing, I was driving there and I couldn't stop and get pictures on my way back, but it was this like cinder block building with karate, MMA, and something else spray painted on the side. I would have, that just was worth it to just, hey man, what are y'all doing in here?
I mean, the most bananas things I've seen recently is I went to go visit B Team, and they're like in a strip mall, like inside Chinese food court kind of area.
Yeah,
and
I've been there.
To the left is like an Aikido gym that they could easily be like, hey, get out of here. But there's a fully functioning old-fashioned
Greg
Aikido
Jones
gym.
legally owns that Aikido gym now. Just all he has to do is walk in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, crikey, what we're going to do here today is...
And it's just like it's still there. It's still up and running. I don't know how those students aren't like, well, I mean,
Aikido's very, very popular, and it still is somehow. A lot of guys who wear not to put too much shame on Trevor Loken here, but a lot of guys who wear Indiana Jones hats to the mall like Aikido.
Okay.
Like a guy came into hometown, the school I teach at, I think it was like a month ago, 2 months ago, with like a big Indiana Jones style hat and snakeskin cowboy boots, and he was like, yeah, I'm a black belt in Aikido. I'm just looking to learn some more different kinds of striking and stuff. And I was like, oh, please do come back. And this guy Hunter was like, we got some gear right now. You want? He was trying to this guy's not getting away. I want to get on the mat with him.
I was like putting your wrist out, like, please.
Yeah. I had a guy contact my school, God, this is years ago, and he's like, well, I'm a black belt, and it was like some form of Japanese jiu-jitsu, and I'm like, and he's like, but if I come to your gym, I'm going to start over as a white belt. I'm like, don't worry, you will.
Oh, don't worry.
And he's like, I'm like, what did you concentrate mostly on? It was like more striking, grappling, samurai sword.
Oh. Interesting.
I'm just saying, zombie apocalypse comes.
I mean, look, dude,
ready.
I'm all for melee weapons.
I feel like that's the kind of thing I can get good at in a weekend with a.
While you were learning how to Kimura trap people, I studied the blades.
For the zombie apocalypse, I'll be practicing that with some beers in the backyard.
Oh, dude. Pat Oswald used to have this bit where he was talking about, he's like, think about the vampires invaded. He's like, it wouldn't be like these movies and everybody's stressed out. It'd be like, dude, we're all going to get really hammered. Yeah. We're going to get like a cross, be like, red light, green light, red light, green light. Like, that's what I'm looking for. That's the thing that pissed me off about a lot of this stuff. There's no zombie apocalypse. There's no Red Dawn. Like, what are we doing in this world, people? Like, come on,
this is
let's
the
go.
closest thing we can get to,
I know.
That's the real Kalima.
Oh, Lord.
Owen Tipton, who took on Liam.
Yes, he did. Took on my son.
At Carolina Combat League, comes back now to face Bodie Henry. And I know that Owen has expressed to me, I've rolled with him now, and I've talked to him quite a bit as well, and he's expressed to me a great frustration in being unable to find other small men to beat up on. And he's excited about this one because it's another adult small person.
Yep.
As someone who's had to have a lot of matches in bracket and also super fights with guys that are Liam's age or younger. I know that.
Well, Liam's 19. He turned 19 last week, so he's technically an adult. But I mean, look, my son on a heavy day is 117 pounds.
Yeah.
Owen was bigger than him, and I mean, they had
a great match.
That was the match of the night, as far as I'm concerned.
I would agree with you.
100%. And Owen is the thing I love. Like the only thing I didn't really know about Owen was like takedowns, wrestling, and Owen showed off some real skills there in that match. But Owen's got a good top game. He's got a good bottom game. He can pass. He can play guard. He can go for feet. He can take the back. He's pretty freaking talented. Like, I'm a big fan of Owens.
I would agree.
I'm glad that there are more smaller people showing up because it's the same thing with, like, my son, it's tough for him on days because it's like, dude, you're 100, like, Ruben's, the way the IBJJF used to be is you had to be 18 to get a blue belt. And Ruben, my instructor, just turned 60 in September. And got his coral belt. So he's been around a little while. And his rule was, if you're going to get a blue belt, you have to do adult matches. So at 15 and 110 pounds, I'm sticking my son into adult brackets. Because that was the only way.
Let him keep you up the night before?
Oh, my God. And, like, he's going against guys. And, like, look, he got the thing that put him over the top for his blue belt was a match with a guy at a Ranger Up tournament that was 140 pounds. My son was there just to help. Like, he wasn't supposed to be competing.
But you competed for free if you helped.
Yep.
I did a lot of volunteer work at those
and
tournaments,
he beat the break. I said, Liam, go to the car and get your gi. He had to borrow a pair of pants from Toro, one of our sponsors. Shout out to Boomer. He had to borrow a pair of pants from the booth, and I ended up buying him the gi at an amazing price. And just try to sell people. And beat the brakes off a guy from a really good school who was a blue belt. And I'm like, damn, but, like, it's tough for these guys, man. Like, if you're at the top end of, like, weight or bottom end, you're going to have a hard time finding people. It's just brutal. Yeah,
it's tough. I mean,
I'm glad to see Owen getting more matches because the kid is really good.
And then you see guys like the Giant Slayer, right?
Yep.
That's like almost an inspiration.
Yep.
For someone who, weight, size doesn't really matter. I'm here to compete and just doesn't. Give me somebody. Give me a body.
Yeah, and if you ever, even at my size, you roll with a guy like Esty, Giant Slayer, and he'll give you hell.
Yeah. Oh, God.
He is just so active and impossible to hold down. And Owen's not easy to hold down either, even for a guy my size. I didn't want to, put it all on him, but every time I gave him an inch, his fucking leg would come out of nowhere and wrap around me in some crazy way and turn me around. And yeah, Owens, I think a lot of people see him and see his Instagram and try to do tape study or whatever you want to call it on him for these type of things. And they see this guy's a leg player, De La Riva player. But like you said, in his match with Liam, he showed that he's a lot more three-dimensional. Yep. So I'm hoping we see more of that. And 10th Planet Greenville is a school that last year I knew nothing about. And this year, every time I commentate one of these super fight cards, they've got 2, 3, 4 people on there now. So they're coming along really, really nicely as a school as well. Next match is Drew Belson versus Jake Glover. I know Jake. I've commentated a few of his matches. I know he's super duper game. And I don't know Drew, but I do know Phoenix Jiu-Jitsu.
I know Phoenix pretty well as well.
And that's a good school.
And he should, if he's coming from that school, he's probably going to be well-rounded. He's not going to be uncomfortable with feet. He's going to be, pretty much comfortable everywhere. The thing I like about a lot of schools in this area and, around is, there's not a lot of specialists out there. There's a lot of people who are trying to teach, bring people out as well-rounded grapplers instead of trying to forge everybody in their own image, which I think is always tough. And it's good to see when you have that coming out of any school. So, big fan of that.
Yeah, you don't want people to, like you said, become too like one-trick pony and specialize them, but you also can't have every student on the same curriculum, right? Like you want to be able to show them the buffet and then let them make their own plate.
Well, I mean, they're all. I mean, you want to help people because, like, just show them a way, because at the end of the day, they're adults.
Yep.
So I'm not going to be your dad.
Exactly.
And that's a big problem with a lot of gyms. Is you don't want to just be this overarching authority figure that's like, you got to do it this way because this is the way, and because one, it doesn't help with creativity, and creativity is good for an art, but at the same time, it's like these people are paying you for a service, and you're just trying to make them the best that they can be. So you can show them the best way that with your experience and knowledge on how maybe that's the right path for them, but ultimately it's going to be up to them. And maybe they make bad choices or whatever for themselves, and they learn, hopefully, through those experiences, and they get better. And
Absolutely.
Sometimes, like, bad experiences are good. It just
Look,
makes you a better person.
I mean, I was, talking to a coach last night about a short notice fight that his fighter took, and it did not go well for that person. And at the end of it, they kind of sat down and they said, you know what? You've got a really bright future. That being said, you wanted this, you fought for it, you got it. You were woefully unprepared for the type of person you had against you. We just learned a really valuable lesson here. And, they always, again, like, I hate losing, but you get a lot out of a loss. Like, you can get a lot out of a win, but you can get a lot out of a loss. So it's definitely not a bad thing in that regard. I agree with you completely.
And with winning and losing, since this is such a combat sport, I'm with you, Vernon, on, like, the idea of, winning or losing's not... people love winners because that's what people pay, but losing's also part of the journey. It's about being safe, because this is a combat sport. If you can teach your students how to be safe through whatever match that they're having, and they can come out on the other side completely fine, even though they may have lost dominantly or by submission or whatever the case may be, but they can roll it around and the next week try it again without having to worry
They can
about
be back in the gym on Monday if
Right.
they want to.
That's the goal.
Exactly.
That's the goal.
When I see guys who, out there getting their arm broken for a $2 Naga medal, I'm like, bro, you just cost yourself work, this, that, the other. Like, don't.
Yeah.
Look, we all tap. It's life. Get over it.
Yeah.
Not everybody's Gordon Ryan.
Yeah.
Shoulder slings don't look attractive on anyone either. It's not a good day accessory if you're
I've had 2 shoulder surgeries. You ain't got to tell me.
Bouncing back over here, we've got our one of our only other gi matches of the night. Nicholas Ragnar versus David Betancourt, who I guess they call Little David here.
Yep.
Doesn't necessarily mean he's little. It just means that he's smaller than David Chuklea.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
which is a high bar. Let me tell you to live up
that's
to.
a big
I'm
bar.
smaller than David Chuklea. So,
The heavyweight pro MMA fighter?
yeah. So you guys are familiar with David then, since he
I am.
trains out of here. So what can you tell me about this matchup as we get ready to go into it?
He's got a pretty solid game. Wicked Darce joke.
He's a guy that I'm surprised has, like, got blue belt next to his name, but
Yep.
That's the way I look at it.
Yep.
is-
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
I'd rather
again,
be overdue for a purple
Right,
than
exactly.
get it early,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Yeah, that's very true.
but David's pretty good. Pretty solid game all around. Definitely, he's got a good passing game. He's got some good pressure. Fun to roll with. I mean, I love rolling with David. It's always a good time.
Yeah, but what size are these guys?
David's about like 150, 160, somewhere in there.
And for Nicholas, he's part of the board of Rolling for Resilience, which is a nonprofit.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
And so he just wanted to make sure that people know. Definitely look out for them. They might be here.
I would hope so.
And what is their cause? Do they do different things? They do different they support different causes? Or
I
just-
believe that's what it is.
Veteran
It's
work,
like-
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I remember, was it GIs in the gi, or what was that?
Geese for GIs.
Geese
Yeah,
for
he's-
GIs. That was one of my favorite ones.
Well, he's
back
still
in the
around.
Tour Cup days. Yeah,
He's
I
still
haven't
around.
seen him at anything
He's
in a while.
had a lot going on, but like I'll still send him stuff from time to time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love
Out of Wilmington, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I used to roll.
Brian Crandall.
Brian, there we go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all those programs. We love to see it. We love to see it. Speaking of people trying to help out jiu-jitsu practitioners, Brian Wagner, shout outs to you.
Yep.
You're offering $100 for the fastest submission at this event, and I think that we talk about who's eligible for that fastest submission. That's the beauty of these like blue belt, purple belt matches, is that one little mistake can cost you. Whereas normally at the black belt level, we see more of like a setup, and it takes a little time because people are so good at defending. Especially like, I don't know if you've ever seen a black belt on another black belt's back, but even at like this level instead of the world championship level, it's crazy how hard it is to finish someone
10 minutes long.
from the most dominant position in jiu-jitsu. It's like incredibly hard to finish people. So Matt LaBelle from CJJA is going to be taking on Mike Bullock from TFA.
Mike just got his blue belt this week.
Mike's the guy who does MMA as well?
He's working some training, but Mike actually was one of my students before I shut down.
Okay.
I know Mike
Out
pretty
on
well.
Indian Trail?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Mike's got he's a lanky guy, good guard game. His back control has gotten really good. If you saw the Carolina combat that was here, he's the one who ran out time both times off back control. Like, his back game is actually pretty solid.
Yeah, that's very rare to see anybody use the entire clock in overtime, and he did it twice in one fight. I was super impressed with that.
Yeah, and he's like, I was thinking of this one episode of King of the Hill where they're talking about Bobby, and they're like, well, he's like mud. You can push him down, and all he does is ooze through your fingers and come and pop back up. Like, that's kind of how Mike is. Like, Mike came in, and I had a pretty solid crew, and would just get smashed by everybody, and just kept coming back. And next thing you know, he got his guard back. Next thing you know, he was holding you in guard. Like, he was getting pretty. I've seen a lot of improvement in him. I'm a big fan of it. I probably know Matt if I saw his face, but I go to Charlotte Jiu-Jitsu a lot myself, but I don't know who he is off the top of my head, so I will let you.
I just look at his face, and he goes to CJA. I don't really know him either. It's a big school, and
it's a large school.
It's funny. It's like if you go to night classes, you don't know the daytime people, and like I go to the daytime, and I used to go when it was first at the other place. Like, I used to go nighttime. Now my schedule switched around, so the people I know are different than night people. But then on Saturdays, maybe during open mat,
you'll see
There were
everybody.
like 80 people there on Saturday. Like, I went the day after New Year's, and there was like 50 people there, and I was like, oh my god, there's so much. And there's a lot of mat space too. They got a place that can handle it. Zach Moore, one of my favorite competitors in the area right now, taking on Frank Miller from 10th Planet Greenville. And Zach's a dog. I mean, you ever watch him compete? He keeps the pressure high and keeps the pace high, and he's not afraid to grip it and rip it, as we learned on that Toro Cup match that he had recently, where he completely separated a man from the bottom half of his leg, and it was one of the worst. But it was one of those things where it's like there's not even a $2 medal on the line, and there was this. It's not like this kid didn't have time to tap. He had ample time to tap.
I don't understand that.
But when you're against a guy from Next Element Academy, you cannot sleep on the foot stuff, on the heel hooks especially. I mean, Leah, Zach, Ethan, Painter, they all have super, super nice footwork.
They definitely do.
And now we've seen Zach have a little bit of wrestling too. He's been forced to wrestle in the past couple matches, and he had a really good wrestler, and then he went up against that guy who was a lot taller that he ended up heel hooking. And he threw him over his head like WWE style one time. He's small, but he's like a cannonball of a man. He is explosive.
I watched him compete. I think at Battlefield. I watched him compete, and he had really good head control.
Yeah.
I was very surprised that, like, coming from a team where they've all got. I mean, obviously one it coincides with the other. You attack the head, and you can probably go back and attack the legs. It works with synchronicity, but. He had really good head control, and like you said, really good wrestling on top of that.
A lot of people prioritize that head. I'm definitely that way myself. Whether I'm simply looking to pass the guard or whether I'm already in a dominant position, that's like my main target every time. Is I got to keep an eye on that head, because I feel like every sweep, every directional change that happens on the mat, it starts with them turning their head first, or almost always starts with them turning their head first. So if you can control that, you can hopefully control the action a little bit better. But I'm definitely always looking forward to a match like that. We have Brad Blades from Great Grappling taking on Glenn Donahue from TMA/CBJJ. First purple belt of the match. And we got some 40s. Got some old guys in here, Vernon.
Glenn is... I've rolled with Glenn a bunch. Glenn is a dog. Like,
I was about to say.
There's so many times in a match, like, I look at Glenn, I'm like, God, he's overmatching this, and like he starts off like on the bottom, and he's kind of getting smashed, and all of a sudden he's on the guy's back, and I'm like,
I love guys like that.
Yeah,
I'm assuming
huge
it's
fan,
happened. Yeah.
huge fan, huge fan.
Yeah.
Yeah, Glenn's really good.
I had the opportunity of rolling him with recently, and rolling with him is like a match.
Yeah.
I'm like, damn.
Yep.
Guy, keep going. I was like, all right, okay.
You gotta love that, man.
Yeah, I love it.
I know a lot about great grappling. I know Jeremy Orrell very well and Johnny. Obviously very solid half guard game, good passing. I don't know much about Brad. I don't think I've ever seen him compete before. So
I feel like I remember that name. It sounds like an '80s wrestler.
Yeah.
So I mean that's a pretty memorable name.
Yeah.
So after that we've got TFA's very own Jimmy Locklear taking on Adolfo Badola from Davidson County. BJJ bouncing back to the blues. These must be some pretty advanced blue belts.
Well, they're both big boys too.
Oh, so
these are ultra heavies. They're big boys.
Oh, okay.
I think we're gonna see a lot of wrestling in this match.
Really?
I know that Davidson County is part of my affiliation. That's Team Hubao.
They're really making a name for themselves.
They've got a good overall game, but they started off as more of an MMA school and like real heavy on the wrestling. And a couple of the guys who were there who were coaching, like Matt Walker, really good wrestler. Chad always had a good wrestling base. His son Devin, even though he never chooses to use it, has a good wrestling base. He likes to sit to his butt too much. And Jimmy, of course, I've rolled with Jimmy a good bit, and Jimmy's got solid wrestling and so on. So, like, I got a feeling we're going to see a lot of feet in this match, a lot of stand-up in this match, but it should be a lot of fun. I mean, I know they both, if Adolfo, who I think he is, they both move really well and are kind of awkward, which I love that in a wrestling match, especially with two big boys. I think it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I was watching Jimmy roll last night.
Yep.
It looked good.
Yep.
So I'm excited for this. I'm excited for this matchup.
I always love technical heavyweights.
Yeah.
That's like my favorite subgenre of grappling.
Yeah.
Hey, man.
I want to see the technical guys that
Scariest
are also
people in the world.
extremely. Yeah, I mean, one of my main training partners is Kevin Satterfield, who's like one of the biggest, strongest people you could ever hope to roll with. But now that he's been pursuing jiu-jitsu at such a high level for such a long time, he's also one of the most technical training partners you could ask for too. And it's like being systematically destroyed and picked apart by a gorilla. Like if you can imagine a gorilla on the chessboard, but it's the queen piece.
Wait. He's not a gorilla. He's a Sasquatch.
Yeah.
Get it correctly.
I don't know what's stronger. I honestly don't. I mean, obviously the Sasquatch has some mythical power of some sort.
See, that's exactly it.
To me, like, Frank Mir guard is the scariest thing possible. Like, obviously a heavyweight with big power is like, that's normal. But a guy who can just move like a ballerina off his back, that's like 260.
Yeah.
Well, look at Cyril Gahn. How much Cyril Gahn shaking up the heavyweight division just by being a guy who can actually bounce back and forth.
Right.
Yep. He does more than just move in a straight line or move in a circle. He can, dart in and out, and that's completely changed the scope of the heavyweight division. This is a guy who got all the way to the heavyweight title without even knowing how to defend a double leg.
Yeah. Well, and I mean the thing is with bigger guys, it's everybody always says it's less technical, and like I personally feel Joe Rogan kind of fucked the game up a little bit when he said if you're going to learn jiu-jitsu, learn from somebody smaller. Yes and no. The problem is if you're a little guy and you're super flexible or super fast or something like that, even the average 30-something, 170-pound man that walks in your gym that's never done anything before, he's going to have a hard time learning that style. The thing about a lot of big guys is it doesn't look very impressive because they're not doing all the little movement and all the other stuff. Like I remember rolling with the Murdochs. I love the Murdochs. I've rolled with them a lot. And like we were working this one guard pass, and CJ and Josh would do this little extra hip switch thing. And I'm like, why are you doing that? I could never see the need to do that. And they're like, well, we're going against 20-year-olds who are 140 pounds. If I don't fully clear a certain way, they get a big toe in, they're getting their guard back.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about that from a 40-year-old, 200-pound dude. It's a different thing. But what those guys do very well is they're very methodical and they're very technical at what they do. It's just it doesn't get appreciated because like if you're smaller and you feel it's like, oh, you're just stronger than me. No, a lot of technique probably went into the way he smashed you out. You just don't realize it because if you're like you're a big dude, if you're doing that only to little guys and you get a guy your size and you can't play that game, yeah, your game is trash. But if you're doing the exact same thing that you're doing to him, that you do to me, that you do to a guy your size,
there you go.
then you're really good and you're very technical. It's not just a matter of like, well, I'm so much stronger than you. It helps, but there's a lot of guys who are stronger than me that I managed to beat because I'm in better positions. I'm more technical. I have this. I understand that. And they're just trying to guerrilla me. It makes a big difference.
Well, I mean, in fighting, you see like people will oh, maybe I'm not the right weight class. So they try to go down because they feel like they need the size advantage, but really it's a technical issue.
Yeah,
If you technically get better, then someone of equal size, maybe a little bit bigger than you, shouldn't be an issue if you're doing everything correctly, right? But if you're just like, oh, it's because I'm not big enough, or it's because I'm not big enough for this weight class. It's like, no, that's not necessarily true. You just have some things that you have to patch up and get good at.
Well, you're 100%. Well, I mean, again, I think that also stems from older MMA, where like if you think about it, arguably the best division in the UFC for a long time has been 155 pound, and there was a while where they got rid of it. So if you were 155 pounds or lighter, good luck back then. Yeah. So now everybody's like, oh, well, I got to cut. No, you don't have to cut anymore. It's like, just get better. You're 100% correct.
It's interesting that like that's the easier answer. It's easier for me to imagine myself 20 pounds lighter than it would be for me to imagine myself
getting
better
better
at jiu-jitsu. Well, like that's all, like a lot of the guys.
That's ego, though. That's not you imagining. It's like, well, I'm good enough. I'm just too little. Well, take a hard look in the mirror. Maybe you suck. Like, I've had to do that to myself multiple times, and I'm like, well, I'm getting my ass handed to me. Well, I'm too little for this weight class. No, I suck. Because I need to get better.
Because then you're just hurting yourself by trying to cut that extra weight. You're physically hurting yourself. Yeah. Your body's not going to be able to continue to do that. It's eventually going to stop and shut down before you keep cutting that extreme weight. Where if you feed yourself like, for all those that watch anime, if you feed yourself like a protagonist in an anime show, like big bowls of rice and meat, and then you go and train and get better, then you will get better and stronger.
Yeah,
so imagine that.
Yeah, the Goku method.
As I'm cutting 20 pounds right now.
I mean, you've done it all though. At this point, I mean, you've competed all the way up at ultra heavy, and now you're competing where you are now, and it's like, I mean, you've seen over a long course of how it's not really about trying to get smaller. It's about trying to be the most efficient version of yourself, and right?
This goes back to what I was also saying earlier about like people who want to put their students into a certain mold because that's what they do. I walk in, like I would tell the story of one of my students. He went to a gym in Texas. I'm not going to go into details where, but walks into this gym and Ryan was like 6'4", 300 pounds, and he's like, I was one of the smallest guys in this room, and everybody in there was trying to play like pulling guard and playing weird forms of like shit like rubber guard and things like that, and he's one of the smaller guys, and it's like, why are you doing that? Like, look, I'm not saying I would take, like, the other thing is like, and it's funny because with my son moving, he doesn't know how to play little guy jiu-jitsu. Why? Because he learned from me. Like, we're a little different, unfortunately, but you need to have some big guy tricks. I need to have some little guy tricks. You have to have both. But the key is figuring out, and this is where the buffet thing comes in, what is good for me? And the only way that works is trial and error, unfortunately. But, like, I mean, there's some little guys, like I think of Tanquinho right off bat, who just will smash just about anybody into oblivion.
Piper.
Yeah, Piper.
Some guys that are 140, 150 pounds get on you, and you feel like you've got a 300-pound muscular, roided out freak on top of you.
Oh, dude, my old judo instructor, shout out to Sensei Stokes, 150 pounds, and if he caught you in case Katami, you were not escaping. I used to, like, you're not getting, nope. And he'd finally get it. I'm like,
yeah, I think that's, especially the Kesa and a lot of those positions, when you're talking about weight distribution, it's like, a lot of people just think about making themselves as heavy as possible across your whole body, whereas that 150-pound guy knew to put all 150 pounds around your diaphragm, and you weren't going anywhere.
Nope.
That's the difference between like a master and like a student of smashing, really. Jumping back over to this, Dave Bannon, Kendry Metcalf from Henzo Gracie, Charlotte, and Charlotte Jiu-Jitsu Academy. I imagine you've bounced around with Dave a little bit.
Yep.
I think I've seen him around open mats and stuff like that.
I've worked a few of his matches.
Yeah. So what can we expect from the CJJ athlete?
Well,
I know Kendry competed on the Charlotte Jiu-Jitsu, or this one, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, I mean, Dave is a guy that likes to compete. He's a consummate competitor, and he's on like every card. On top of that, I think he had like, when I see him on a card, if the other person brings it too, it's guaranteed going to be match of the day. Just because forget who, Glenn. We were talking about Glenn. Like, he's just one of those guys. If you roll with him when you're training or if you're competing, he's going to bring it to you. He's going to do his game, and it's up to you to keep up and keep that pace. Otherwise, enjoy tapping for like 5 minutes.
And then we're going to be into the second page of our notes and the latter half of this card here. Brian Armstrong versus James Grimm. I've seen James before. Brian Armstrong from Boondocks MMA, another team that is emerging on the scene, been around for a while, but is starting to get enough competitors and enough people out there to where, I see them, I know okay, the person coming from this is probably going to be a gamer. I've commentated a lot of Fight For It MMA, and they've been on those shows a lot. I think I've seen Brian around there in their corner and stuff. So I know that these are two super game gyms. Not familiar with the game of the personal style of either of these guys.
I'm not either.
Not either.
And I mean, actually, I know a lot of guys who've trained at Boondocks. I like them a lot. And just shout out to Owen Tipton. He used to train there as well.
That's right.
So,
yeah. Yeah. Owen was telling me that's a very different environment than CJJ. The game, the intensity is kind of similar, but what they focus on is very different. Obviously, at Boondocks, they have more of a game that's rounded, or more so around MMA, or just general grappling.
But they like the feet over there, too.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's where Owen gets that wrestling from, At Charlotte Jiu-Jitsu, there's guys with good wrestling, but at the average open mat, there's not enough room to wrestle.
No.
So, I think that, that's a big thing that, I feel like, especially when it comes to the stand-up game, you have to pursue that kind of on your own as a student. You have to look for the opportunities to get better at that. They don't just come to you as much as the other stuff in jiu-jitsu. It's
and there's definitely people that are really good wrestlers, but if they're there for jiu-jitsu, it's wrestlers that want to get good at jiu-jitsu. So you're going to have to take them away for a second and be like, hey,
drag Jake away from that.
Well, I mean, the thing, exactly, the ones who are going to just out-wrestle you are the ones who, they're still learning jiu-jitsu, and they don't want to, they're going to do what they're safe with, and they're not going to tell you what you're doing because they're already afraid of you. They're like, well, I don't want to go to the ground with you, so we're going to do it this way, and I'm going to hold you. Yeah.
Where it's there's a guy from Art Suave, Miles Chapman. I don't know if you guys know him. He wrestled, I'm pretty sure, in college and everything. Very good. And when he first started off, like you said, very wrestling. I know what I was in for. Now he's trained with Hiago, and his jiu-jitsu is so much better that it's maybe he's gonna wrestle me, but I think he's
if he has to use it, it's there.
It's there. But
if he needs it, it's there. But that's the same way I feel about Jake. And we're going into Jake's match now. We talked about it earlier, but yeah, I mean, I think he's one of those guys. He's one of those guys that a lot of people look at him and they see his social media and they're like, oh, this guy's a wrestler. But especially when he has to go up against other strong wrestlers, he's got jiu-jitsu guy tricks. He's good at the jabroni spin. He's good at inverting, stuff like that. So, I mean, those guys that have been grappling, even if it's one sport since they were 8, when they get into another grappling sport, if they're disciplined with it, they become your best. Usually they become your best students. I have a guy, Kyle, who just started training jiu-jitsu with me 4 or 5 months ago. And it's consistently, every class, I show him a technique in the rolls after the class, he can hit it on someone. And it's he doesn't know a lot about jiu-jitsu, but he's learning at a pretty exponential rate compared to most people. A soccer mom coming in at 40 is not going to learn at the same rate as him.
Unless they've just got the body mechanics, and understanding body mechanics is such a big skill.
I agree. That people who dance are typically very good at jiu-jitsu as well.
And I think that's the thing with wrestlers is they may not necessarily go, oh yeah, I do this from this position. It's just body mechanics from grappling. And I think when you have high level jiu-jitsu, wrestling, any kind of grappling art, that's where it starts to become grappling. Catches,
100%.
catch, can is essentially just grappling because you grab a hold of another guy, and then all of a sudden, you're figuring it out.
Submission grappling can contain many different definitions there within, right?
When the way is known broadly, you see it in all things, and if you're correct about body mechanics, but it's also just you've been in enough scrambles, you know without knowing, and it is a big step. And it's why I love cross training so much because you're getting different views and you're getting different neural pathways and all sorts of other nerdy crap that makes you better.
Which these guys are going to have to go from one neural pathway of just the wrestling to then going, oh, we can do that, but then more? It's
I can lock my hands here. That's right. Yeah. Oh, wait, I can choke him here. This is cool.
They'll have plenty of time. There's a lot of matches in between that first one and that second one. So I'm really excited to see this because it's very rare you see two guys compete like on the same night in different matches in an event like this. Obviously, at a tournament, it's more common, but for two different rule sets in one day, I mean, that's a lot to ask. So now we're getting into the part of the card where you're probably recognizing some of these names, including these next two gentlemen, Dustin Bailey out of Team Mannon versus Christian O'Brien, CJJA internet superstar Christian O'Brien, the master of the kneel knot. I mean, I saw that they just rematched him with Jack for Toro Cup, and all I replied to that poster was, "Well, this is good. This is interesting." You know, like that says a lot about how people felt about that match. But I was blown away by that submission when it happened. I remember that I think you were on the desk with me, and I was like, "Yeah, I don't know what to call that. I guess we just call that winner by submission." And then obviously, we've all been educated since then several times over by many different BJJ Instagram pages. Christian's just one of those guys, man. He is, anytime you can get him a mat and another guy and a referee, he's going to be there. You know, whether it's this rule set, that rule set, this tournament, this venue, this super fight card, in a cage, on a mat, whatever the case may be, he's going to be there, and he's going to be competing.
Yeah, Christian's his evolutions. Like, I've known him since he transferred over to CJJA. I forget where he was before.
He was up in Greensboro, actually, the same school Ben teaches out of.
Okay.
So I've known who Christian is for a while, and he has gotten a lot better.
Yeah, he's a guy that's he's reached out to people to get better at wrestling, to get better at, like, he's putting work in to become better, and then on top of that, competing. Because it's one thing to just go compete and then compete and be like, you know what? If I win, I win. I lose, and then
learning the lessons from competing,
right? And then trying to get better so those things don't happen again. And like, so every time you compete, it's like, oh, I'm closer to not losing again. You know, I'm getting closer, and where I can put win after win after win. And I mean, it's kind of coming together for him where he's Williams guard to this, this thing, and then viral sensation. But it's about keeping that. So if you do that, it would. I
think it was also a statement for him to be like, I'm not just a foot guy.
Right.
I think before the pandemic, especially, I mean, he competed on many Toro Cups. He's been competing on super fight cards as long as I've been training jiu-jitsu, which has been like 6 years now. And the narrative around him and what people think about him and say about him before he competes has changed dramatically. Like, this is a guy you kind of got to worry about everywhere now. Whereas before, he was kind of known as this guy who had a mean half guard and great leg entries. Now he's a guy who people regard very highly in almost every area. So as he continues to journey through purple belt, and I feel like he's the perfect age, the perfect size, the perfect style to have a very long and successful purple belt career. So very excited to see how that continues to shake out. Dustin, I've seen compete twice now. And he's a great opponent for Christian, I think.
And comes from a really tough school. I know the Manning guys
school
pretty well, and they're all tough as nails. Tim is a tough dude. I've trained at his school a couple times up in Blacksburg. Great guy, old school Henzo guy. Like, he's a good dude.
That's why I think he's a good opponent for. That's why I think Dustin's a good opponent for Christian, is because Dustin has a little bit more of a traditional approach, and I'm always interested to see like weird modern jiu-jitsu that a lot of people don't even know the names of some of the stuff versus like very bread and butter, very proven jiu-jitsu. I don't want to say basic, I want to say proven techniques, proven styles.
I agree with you, and that's one of my favorite sayings is it's the samurai, not the sword.
I like the traditional. To me, it always gets the category of like Hicks and Gracie. You never go backwards, and it's like there's nothing inherently fundamentally wrong with that. Like, if you proceed forward, I don't want to go back into your guard. It's a very old school mentality that is upheld through years, rather than like some old school mentalities that you're like, okay, time to evolve. But this one is like, it's
tried
good,
and true.
Right. It's good for self-defense. It's good for MMA. It's like, if I proceed in my position, I want to maintain dominant control. And that's when people say, oh, he's got that real good fundamental. I was like, oh, he's got that Hicks and Gracie. Like, smash him, stay on top.
After that, we've got Mike Murray, who I think we're all a little bit familiar with. Definitely a name that you see a lot. Versus Joey Fitzpatrick, also from that 10th Planet Greenville school. And 10th Planet Greenville filling this card out. A lot of competitors on here. Davidson County BJJ. I know Mike Murray's a big part of that team. Have you actually rolled with him?
I have not actually. I've not been up there in a minute, which my bad. I actually feel bad about that. But I know the room he's coming from. I know a lot of the guys in that room, and he's tough. Like
it's turning into a really good room. Yeah.
And I have here that he has MMA experience in Maine.
That's right. Yep. Mike Murray's the one who has MMA fights up in Maine. So I don't know if he recently moved to the area, but I know that he's already competed like once or twice. I think here. Yep. I think the first one was on the Super Fight Series. And I think he also did the CCL that was here as well. Then we've got Joshua Baruch versus Paul Williams from Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Lake Norman, a school that I've never heard of, which is interesting because I thought I knew every Charlotte area school. And so for something to be in Lake Norman and me not know about it's pretty crazy. And then he's taking on Joshua, who's from that Swamp Fox team. Brown versus purple. So interesting kind of matchup. I would imagine Joshua's pretty far along in his purple belt.
I know Paul.
Yeah, Paul
used to roll with him at CJJA.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
And he moved down from I think New York or some area. He was a very good addition to CJJA, especially in my weight. He was giving me really hard rolls, and then during the pandemic and everything like that, I don't know if he moved or whatnot.
I think he moved,
He moved. So I haven't really gotten to roll with him since, but from what I remember,
he was a tough roll.
Yeah,
he was a tough roll. He actually would always want to play feet with me just to learn it, so I always had a good time with him.
Then we've got Mike Damakes from Clemson Jiu-Jitsu versus Eric DeVere, 2 brown belts. We're getting into the brown belt, black belt level matches here. And super high level guys here from one from Clemson Jiu-Jitsu, which is more, I think it's more of a club, or is that an actual school? That's like
I don't know them that well. I don't know a lot of the schools down that way. I know a couple, but not that one. I know Eric. I've seen Eric for years with Boondocks, and so I know Eric's pretty solid.
He's one of the main guys out of that.
Yes,
school.
he is.
Yeah.
Him, and I'm forgetting the young. I've seen the younger guy recently at CJA. Actually, I'm drawing an utter blank right now because it's just been one of those days. But I think that should be, at least looks on paper like a fun match. And again, it's always nice when you have, again, I think one of the things that I'm gonna go on one more quick rant, I swear. I've noticed this a lot over the past few years. There's all these super fight cards popping up that are freaking amazing. Like this one, Fight to Win was in town. And they always have a hard time filling out the matches with brown and black belts. Why? Look, if you're a black belt, they don't know who you are. Just apply. You can get over yourself and apply for a card. Compete. Hell, the advantage of a super fight card is if you've got students, chances are they probably won't be on the card, or you can ask them not to compete on said card so you don't have to worry about it, because I know how hard it can be to coach and compete at the same time. But especially you older black belts, i.e. in my old fart age range, can we please get off our ass and actually compete some more? It would be much obliged. I'm coming off of shoulder surgery.
If you want to beat him, now's the time.
I don't know what else to say. Shit. It breaks my heart to see that shit, because there's a lot of guys who, I've had to, with the Carolina Combat card here, my opponent dropped out. The guy is damn near 60, beaten cancer, and got pancreatitis. I respect him, and he was mad he had to pull out and messaged me apologizing. Okay, I tagged multiple people trying to get a match, and thankfully to Roy Jones, he stepped up. But
as he is one to do.
Exactly.
As he is one to do. He's one of those guys.
Everybody else was like, my dog's got a lot of homework and words. I'm sick of it.
If people are into jiu-jitsu, especially as long as they are, or martial arts in general, it's at least for me personally, the reason why I got into this is it's something that I can do for the rest of my life, hopefully, if I can compete.
If you do it right.
If I do it right.
Yeah.
And, as you get older, obviously, you don't work as well physically, but that's okay, because there's other people, hopefully your age, that now that the popularity of the sport's grown, they'll be aging with you. So there's no reason why when you get older that there shouldn't be, 20 people in each division at 40 years old.
Thank you. Look, here's the deal. Show up to an event like this and let's show the children how it's done. That's one of the reasons I'm glad I got a match with Diego, because I love Diego, and frankly, we're going to show you young boys how it's done.
And yeah, I mean, as a student, I really appreciate a coach that, leads from the front. And, when I first got into training, training under Cody, he was still competing in MMA.
Yep.
And also doing grappling tournaments and doing Toro Cup super fights. And, I don't need that for me to be a student at your school. But, man, it really instills a lot of confidence in me, even if you're not winning, just to see you out there implementing the techniques you're teaching.
I've had two of these things said to me, and this one on multiple occasions. I've had guys say to me, I can't lose in front of my students because then they'll leave. If that's what you're instilling in your students, then you're doing it wrong.
And how do you feel about it when they lose?
Yeah. Well, not only that, but it's like, okay, I lost, but I have lost a lot in front of students, and everybody was in class on Monday. Everybody's like, damn, coach, you put it on the line. That's how it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And then I've had other ones who, again, I don't like to mention names because I'm a nice guy, but who've said to me, oh, I would not, you lost your last 3 matches. When was the last time you competed? Well, I got to do the gutters. Right. And then I'm like, okay, well, there's a card coming up. Why don't you go against me? Well, you compete too much. Well, you just said I sucked. I should be an easy win, but now you're afraid of me because I compete too much?
He competes too much and he just has shoulder shock. We're planting the seeds, right? He's planting the seed. He's trying to coach you motherfuckers out on this podcast right now.
I'm not that smart. You're giving me too much credit.
I don't know about that, bro. I don't know about all that.
He's trying to fill his 2023.
I'm excited to get to his match, so we're going to have to talk about Austin's right now. So Matt Legg versus Austin Borders. Matt Legg fighting out of Hub City, and then Austin Borders, self-proclaimed, and I think not wrong either, best hair on the card. I said at the last CJJA, I was like, man, this has been an 8-minute match, and this guy's hair is not a single strand out of place. So I like Austin a lot. I've seen him roll. I haven't rolled him myself, but every time I've been to CJJ, he's there and he's rolling the entire time. The entire 2 hours or whatever it is of rolling, he's there. He's one of the last people on the mat every time I've been there. So I know he's a super gamer, and I was really impressed. The last time I saw him at CCL was the first time I'd ever seen him compete in a real match. I was super impressed with what I saw, and he's stepping up big here, taking on a brown belt in Matt Legg, who I've seen a little bit of. I haven't seen him in a rule set like this. I think I've only seen him at an actual tournament before. But you guys are a little bit more familiar with him? Maybe?
I've rolled with Matt before. Yeah, okay. Matt's pretty good. Matt's solid. I've rolled with Matt like open mats and things like that. Matt is pretty solid. So
he looks like he would be a little bit bigger than Austin too. So you might have like an experience and a little bit of a height difference maybe. But I'm not sure.
Matt's solid. Matt's been around for a long time. I've seen Austin. Austin is also very good. I think my hair is better, but that's just me.
If Austin's smart, he's gonna shout out his barber.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know who's cutting that thing, but it looks good.
Yeah, exactly.
Then we got a rematch of a match from Tap Cancer Out 2020, back when there was a pandemic and there was no open. There was a super fight series, and on that super fight card right here in Charlotte at 4M Fitness, Diego took on Vernon in their last match, and it was a banger of a match. Did not go your way.
Nope.
But it went the full time, right?
It was I lost a decision, and Diego was smooth as silk. Love his game. I've actually trained with him some since then, and I love Diego. Diego's a great guy, so I'm looking forward to it again. And I don't know if I haven't seen the poster yet, but we were supposed to go against each other at Toro a few weeks later as well.
I remember that. So what, in your opinion, as someone who's trained with this guy, competed against him, what's the most dangerous aspect of his game?
He's one of those guys where it's like he's just way too smooth for his own good. Like, he's explosive and he's smooth. Like, I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm safe. Why am I upside down? Like, okay, that was a little freaky. So he's got that really good, old school jiu-jitsu, which I appreciate. I love matches like this where, he is very experienced. If memory serves me correctly, and if I'm wrong, sorry, but I think he got his black belt inside of 7 years from Pedro Sauer in Brazil.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That says a lot.
So for you, is it like going to those, we were talking before, those other arts to try to pull something, that he does, traditional jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, because you've certainly changed a lot in the last 2 years.
I definitely do. Honestly, with him, it's the biggest thing for me is working, controlling, passing. It's one of the reasons why I love Piper. It's one of the reasons, I've been down at Lycan a few times with my son. And a few of the other spots I hit where control with my passing and changing up a few things that I do has really helped me a lot. I'm also have changed a few things I do stand-up wise because, most people are going to pull on me, so I'm trying to make it harder for you to pull on me and hopefully get a cheap takedown out of it.
Do you feel like that's the biggest thing you're bringing to this match that you didn't have when you previously met?
I definitely think my passing has gotten better. We'll see for sure here in a little bit.
Yeah.
But I definitely feel like, it's funny, when I got my black belt, I felt like you start all over again. Like I remember going against Zhu Cao, who is, he runs ATT Atlanta, coach of the Lima brothers, won 80cc trials in 2003 in Brazil, and I had to go against him in the finals in no-gi pans back in 21, and he beat the brakes off of me, and it's just that difference of experience, right? Like, he's just been around forever, and it's tough, and that's the toughest thing. But I also feel like I'm the type of person, like, I like deadlines. I will procrastinate everything. Like, I was excited last night because I got my November expense report done, and I turned in September and October the day before, and it's February. And, so I like to have the pressure of somebody this good. It makes me work because I need, this is why I compete as much as I do, because I need that to push me. And when you have somebody who's that good and has a win across from you, it forces you to step your game up, because it's like, well, I don't want to have that happen to me again. What else can we do? So.
Yeah, to speak on you being able to compete against guys of that caliber, though, it's like you're able to get the quote-unquote rub. Like, if you compete against Zhu Cao,
yep.
You can take that and be like, well, if I could do this against him, or take him to this point, it's like,
if I can even win an underhook battle,
yeah,
yep.
Like, it's like, oh, I won an underhook battle against
what's anyone else's underhook,
right? Yeah.
I mean, well, that's the thing. It's like, this is the thing that is beautiful about this martial art. Like, you can go train with the best in the world. Like, it's going to cost you a little bit, but you could fly down to Texas right now, go train at B Team, go train at New Wave, go whatever. Look, I have the story of going to a Gordon Ryan seminar back in 2015 when nobody knew who the fudge he was, and paying $40. I reffed a match of his that we announced on the day he won his first EBI. Like, you're not going to get that out of basketball. You're not going to get that out of golf. You're not. No, you just exactly
Show
right.
up with a football to Carolina Panthers and be like, hey, you guys want to pass the ball around?
Yeah. Anybody you doing privates?
Like, look, I started all this as a fat 31-year-old, and I'm now selling videos on BJJ Fanatics. Like, I don't know how the fuck I did it, but I'm here.
Kept showing up is what happened.
That's basically
Kept
it.
showing up, kept throwing people on their fucking head. Then in our final match of the evening, I think the reason why this is a brown belt match that has been pushed to the final, what you would call the main event of the evening, is because both these guys consistently bring the heat. They bring exciting matchups when they're out there. Talking about Philip Painter from the Next Element Academy taking on Kyrie Howe from Phoenix Jiu-Jitsu. Two of the most competitive and the most active schools in competition in the area, and two of their best guys. Definitely, I think Philip Painter is the guy most people think about when they think about Next Element. And then Kyrie Howe, he's on a great team, but he's also a standout competitor when it comes to the Phoenix Jiu-Jitsu team. So I think we can obviously expect some fireworks here. Philip, very much known for that reverse or that no-gi De La Hiva game that he's got. But I think that lately he's been branching out a little bit more outside of that game. He's certainly gotten a lot stronger, a lot more muscular in the last couple of years. So I think we're in for a really, really good final match here on this card, guys.
Yeah, it's one of those where it's got brown belts listed, but you're just like, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially in no-gi. I would favor these guys in a lot of matchups against black belts their size. They're just that good.
It's
both of them.
Philip's when you think of Next Element, you think of him. He's a very good captain, if you will, of a team, because it's not like it's not his academy, but when they go to compete, he's the one that's the lead. He's taking the, as you can see here, the final match, and tie the ribbon on the whole present of Next Element coming in here to do.
Especially with those people on that team that compete, when you see them posting videos of them training, a lot of times they're training with Phil.
Yeah.
So he knows their game very intimately. I think he's coming into his own as a coach, but he's also only getting better as a competitor. And I've commentated a lot of matches for this guy, and I've seen him go from purple belt to where he is now, very early purple belt to where he is now, and it's like he was always good at X and Y thing, but now he's filling out the rest of the check marks. He's catching everything up. Like we talked about, when you're at a purple belt level, you should probably be a black belt in one thing. He was,
Definitely.
and now he's trying to round the game out. So.
Shout out to Phil for getting me in like 7 seconds.
Yes, that Toro Cup.
Good
Yeah, we
Toro
talked
Cup.
about that a
Yeah.
little bit.
I mean, this is the thing. We have two really, like, this is the type of matchup that I love about this, and this is why I love jiu-jitsu in the Carolinas, because you have two guys from from the north and the south going against each other that are really like you take both of these guys to no-gi pans, no-gi worlds, or even something like ADCC trials, and they're probably going to do very well.
Yeah, they're going to defy expectations for anybody who doesn't know who they are.
I mean, it's the fight to win back in 21 where, Shama went against Pierre Leclerc, and Shama was like one of the biggest underdogs I've ever seen because nobody knew who he was. Except for us, and I think I don't know about you, but I put a little money on that one. Thank you, Shama.
Yeah, Shama's. I mean, yeah, it's one of those cases of, like you said, I would love to see these guys go and do ADCC trials.
Yep.
Because why not shock the? That's one of those places where you can say what you want about IBJJF, but if like you win ADCC, you'll win. Like you'll win grappling.
Especially no gi.
Yeah.
And right now there's this like, oh well, I guess they're gonna go do ADCC trials. So what's the point of me going and doing it? Because you see the brackets or whatever they come out. And it's like, oh, what's the point of even trying? It's like, no, go try, because you might catch these guys by surprise that they're not ready. You're
100% correct, but here's the other thing. How do you know what the bar is unless you've pushed up against it? Like, I've rolled with some of the best in the world, and I felt like, I remember rolling with Cyborg as a purple belt, and I got up, and I started laughing. And he goes, "What's so funny?" I go, "Now I know how my 11-year-old daughter feels when she rolls with daddy." And he started laughing at me. He's like, "No, my friend, you do what?" Bullshit. I know what just happened to me, sir. I know.
No one's more aware than me.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have to butter me up, Cyborg.
Right. But again, guys, like, this is the only way you know is if you go. And you might surprise yourself. Like, that's the whole purpose of competing. If you're going to kill your mindset before you step out of the door, look, I prefer situations like that. Like, I like being the underdog. It's a real easy narrative for me to hype myself up around. Like, everybody's against me. Fuck them. Let's go, let's go, let's go. But so what? Like, why? Like, I always say, like, if you're a guy, like, I see this all the time. Like, I see guys who, like, they handpick stuff. They handpick their matchups. They look for tournaments with weak brackets and things like that so they can pad their resume
He's
a little
talking
bit.
about 40-year-old black belts.
You mean the guy who went in the no-gi division at Naga and stands there with the belt, and a guy who's really just a blue belt? No, I don't know anything about those guys.
Couldn't be me.
Right, but like, here's the thing, man. Like, why do that? Like,
Especially once you've done what these two guys have done.
Yeah.
Especially after this match, it's like, what else is out there for them to prove in terms of the local level? It's only one way to go, and that's up. And I could definitely easily see either of these two guys competing on one of those stages. So.
And as much as I do say martial arts is something you want to have like longevity with and continue with the rest of your life, like high level competition is like you only have a short window of that.
Yep.
Yeah.
In your life. So to be
Definitely.
like, oh,
and
I'm
both
not
these guys
ready.
are in their prime.
Right.
Both these guys are.
And you can't be like, oh, I'm not ready, or like, it's like you just have to go. You have to go. And obviously you don't want to put yourself at risk of anything, but at this high level with their game, it's like, at this point, just go and try. Try to tap out a Meow Brother or something,
Mm-hmm. Well, look, here's the thing. Like, one of two things is going to happen. Like, you're going to surprise yourself or you're going to disappoint yourself, right? Like, one or the other. You disappoint yourself, you have two options at that point. You can take the mindset of like, well, I guess just wasn't good enough, I'll keep doing it. Or you can say, admission. That's all it is. And that's my mindset. Like, anytime I've had my ass handed to me, it's like, oh, okay. That's what I have to beat. I can beat that. And you just come back stronger. That's all it is.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, anything you guys want to say, Vern? Any shout-outs, anything like that you want to give?
We've already shouted out Toro and American Murder Pajamas because we love them dearly, and Brian Wagner. But let's also give out to Admiralty Wealth Management and Stephanie
Chiclea.
Thank you. Photography.
Yeah, she'll be taking pictures at the event, so you guys can peep her social media stuff to see pictures. I think she also was taking pictures of the last one, if I'm not mistaken.
She probably was.
And then, like we said, we love all of our sponsors. I, myself, if you guys are interested in more MMA side of things, I have a podcast called the 10A Fightcast with my best friend Trevor, where we talk about the world of MMA more so. We touch on jiu-jitsu occasionally, but more so about MMA. And then, you guys will be seeing me more on the pre-show here for the TFA Pro Series as this continues along. Daniel?
You can catch me and my fighters, Southern Scrap Nation. You can come to our academy, Southern Scrap Nation Martial Arts Academy. I've got my amateur fighting next weekend at UBG.
Nice.
For Derek Brunson's thing against one of his guys. And then my pro just got done with a fight at Uriah Faber's A1. Nice. And so now he's looking for, I think, Bellator, I think is the route we're going.
Sweet, man. That's awesome.
Other than that, I've got a podcast as well, Southern Scrap Nation, on YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, wherever you want to find it, Spotify.
And videos available on BJJ Fanatics, When Judo and Jiu-Jitsu Converge Part 1. Working on some other fun parts of that right now. And actually, I picked up a new sponsor. Don't have any of their stuff yet. It should be here next week. But BJJjudo.com. They've got some really slick stuff. Check them out.
Oh, also speaking of Trevor, my guy who's kickboxing next weekend fought against Hunter.
Oh, okay, cool. Hunter was supposed to fight tomorrow, but his opponent dropped out, so we're trying to get him on Fight For It now. We've got 4 fighters from hometown fighting tomorrow on Walker Vivian's card. Obviously, I'm just a grappling coach, so I'll just be chilling.
Yep.
But that is kind of nice sometimes to just sit back and watch people you love compete and not have to worry about being personally involved in the stakes and all the nerves that come with that. I think when I corner fighters, sometimes I get more nervous for the fight than they do, just because I have less control over what's going. Exactly. Like I'd rather my ass be out there.
Exactly.
Shout out to Hunter, our hometown MMA.
Yeah,
if you're in Raleigh.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. MMA grappling and jiu-jitsu program is growing, and we have a lot of guys who are lifetime Muay Thai guys that are just getting into jiu-jitsu. We've got some wrestlers there, so we've got a nice little club that's kind of starting to form there for jiu-jitsu. But definitely, if you're looking to learn some striking and you're in the Raleigh area, I don't think there's any better place you can be than hometown.
Trevor's the man.
Trevor is the man.
All right, guys, that is it for us here on the Pro Series pre-show. Not sure if we're going to do a post-show. I'll talk to Avery about that, and we'll see what's going on. But especially if there's some highlights and some stuff you guys want us to break down, we'd be happy to do that. Support your fighters. Come out to the show on February 18th right here at Try and Fight Academy. And you can find more information if you're curious on their Instagram about start times and stuff like that. Until next time, I'm Dylan, this is Vern and Daniel, and we'll see you next time.